G'day, it's Rob here in Newcastle. Happy World Carnivorous Plant Day 2022. Yay! Here I am at home in Newcastle. Just showing you plants to grow on the western side of our house, starting with two large pots of Drosophilum lusitanicum. So they grew germinated in spring last year due to in response to some heavy rainfall, and as you can see they started to flower and set seed. So they're pretty neat, and as you can see too, growing in sandy mix in big clay pots. Now the main lot of plants we have at this upslope end are winter growing sundews, mostly Western Australia, but many from South Africa too. So this time of year many are emerging from growth, from dormancy, so we're including Drossocystiflora, and you'll see further down Drossel porciflora, but there are also some of the rosetted sundews that are coming into flower. So we have climbing sundews as well as the rosetteds, but here we have Drossel bulbosa, which has already started to flower, and that's pretty neat. That's when we get different clones together, we can get some seed, which is always useful. So as we just come down the slope, start to see some of the saracenia that are grown here. Most of these are from Steve Clementius' collection. Now, I knew Steve for about 30 years. Sadly, he passed away about 2 years ago. But he was one of the first people to grow saracenia in the country, starting in the early 1970s. So many of the plants he grew were from people like Donald Schnell, Joe Masremus, basically people, some of the stalwarts of the genus, and many of the plants that he grew no longer come from extant populations in the wild. Steve was big on hybridising plants too. He had a few themes. He liked the all red pitched plant, he liked the hairy pitched plant, he also liked all green plants. Sometimes he combined features together, which we'll see in some other plants we've got here, such as this all green Saracenia rubus subspecies down the backyard. So here we have an example of a Penthes plant that's been planted in the ground. So this is Penthes maxima cross truncata. The plant itself is getting up 2 and a bit metres tall. He's a boy, he's a male plant, flowers fairly regularly. It's loved the summer we've just had with lots of rain and very humid conditions and not very hot. This isn't the super big form of maxima truncata, but it certainly does have very nice pitches. They'll get up to about 20 centimetres tall, and you can see there just some of them at the upper growing point. One of them is pressed against the back of the iron bark that the plant is growing up. Now this plant has been in the ground for maybe about 3 years or so, 4 years, and it's growing in a mix. It's actually a pot with the bottom cut out, and it's basically a bark and perlite mix, just to give, because he's showing you the details about the base of the pot.
So turn everything upside down.
Yeah,
not good.
But it's a very happy plant. So the thing with the Penthes is they've got a big root system, and learned the hard way that they don't like being planted directly in the ground in the garden soil. They need basically the same mix as you grow them in a pot.
And it's eating.
Yeah, and it certainly catches a lot of insects, and some of them would get put in there as revenge. Mosquitoes that bite you. It's often just
and crinum caterpillars.
Yes, other pests, garden pests, they often end up in the pitches of these Penthes, and they make happy plants, and they give their body to a good cause.
Mm-hmm. Shall we show the other Penthes in the ground?
Yep.
Okay.
Here we are on the eastern side of the house, where we have what we call our Penthes wall for obvious reasons. So this wooden slat fence is being used as a support for many of the Penthes in hanging pots. So all of these come from exotica plants, including this spectacular hybrid. This is Penthes truncata cross ovata. So the pitches get up to about, that's 30, over 30 centimetres tall, with a really rich reddish, very wide peristome. So it has the size of truncata, but it also has a bit more interest given to it from the ovata parent. Now this plant has a stem that goes up not quite a metre. This one's flowered a few months ago. It's a boy plant, as most tend to be. but it's nice that it's got to that stage. So here we also have a nice Nepenthes maxima hybrid. This one is has got the so-called dark maxima, which has the really maroni peristome, plus nice speckles on the pictures themselves. Moving along, we've got Penthes boschiana, which has these pictures in my left hand, but the picture I was wanting to show you is a ventricosa cross truncata hybrid. Now it's a hybrid that I like. It's vigorous, has fairly big pictures, and it gets the advantage of having ventricosa in it, that it's fairly cold tolerant. So I'm hoping this plant will get nice and big and have lots of pictures. And yeah, just one other picture plant I'll show you is Nepenthes red rocket. This one up here. So it's not got the biggest pictures. In fact, they get up to about 12 to 15 centimeters tall, but it's very vigorous. So it's almost like a sort of cold tolerant gracilis. And this plant's in flower, and of course it's a boy plant. So, but yeah, just showing you this is a way that we are able to grow Nepenthes outdoors, not only in the ground, but also just outside. There's some just on the side of the house. So yeah, so I just wanted to show you
The Nepenthes nook.
the Nepenthes nook, which yeah, is getting some really nice results. Thank you. Other Nepenthes in the ground. This is Nepenthes alata cross casiana. This one is the green pictured form. This has been in the ground for about 12 months. Has yet to flower, and I haven't yet checked online to see whether it's a boy or a girl. But it's a very vigorous pitcher plant, and it's nice again to just have it growing in the wild, in our garden beds anyway. And as you can see from the footage there, a few other plants are growing nearby, as many epiphytic orchids, which we're able to grow as easily simply because of the good fortune of living in such a humid climate. But yeah, it's nice to be able to do this, especially when the Penthes get very big, maybe a little bit too big for pots. And so, yeah, it's just nice to give them a bit more space, and that gives us a chance to actually put another smaller Penthes in the hanging pot to let it perhaps get as big to maybe one day end up somewhere else in the garden. Yeah, it's just nice to be able to show how we grow these Nepenthes, large Nepenthes in the ground. Thank you. And another Nepenthes in the ground. This has been in the ground about only a year. This is Trismodiensis cross maxima dark, one that has links to both Phil Mann, who is Trismodiensis plant, and also Fred Howell, who I think, if he didn't make the cross, he was certainly one of the first people to distribute it. And as you can see, it's sending up a flower spike, so it'll be good to see whether it's a boy or a girl. Probably more likely to be a boy. As most of them tend to be, but it's nice that it's now reached that stage. They're growing in the same conditions and only about 5 metres away from that maxima truncata plant. So it's a pot with the bottom cut out, placed it in the garden bed, but with the mix of orchid bark and perlite around the base of the plant, and it can put its roots out into the garden soil if it wants. But the main root mass is in the sort of mix that plants grow in the pot anyway. So again, it's put a lot of growth. Had some nice pictures. They're not looking at their best now. A few new pictures are forming. Some basils as well. But the main thing is it's a happy, healthy plant. And it's good to be able to grow them in the ground. It's quite a privilege to be able to do this with Penthes. Okay, I'll show another one shortly. So all green saracenia was one of his themes. He also liked hairy pictured plants. We'll show you some of those further down.
Here's one.
Yeah,
Not the best example, but it's hairy.
It's his one of his hairy alatas.
And close up a tuberous, just because it's
fuzzy.
cool.
That's Fuzzy talking, narrating in the background there.
Yeah.
Fuzzy.
And Bruchinia.
Also some Bruchinia reducta growing here. Plants, want the biggest plant just finishing flowering. Pinguicula primuliflora, which does very well in this area, as does Drosophila, the red form in the same pot, and a locally native ground orchid as well. So as we scroll down or pan down, so it's one of his red picture plants. Unfortunately, Steve wasn't able to convey the identity of many of his plants. He sadly suffered from dementia in his last 2 years, and so he wasn't able to identify plants where the labels may have faded or broken or were not present at all. So some of these lovely plants, unfortunately, we have no exact identification of. We can narrow it down based on the plants that he grew and that he wrote about. But plants like this look like they've got well, definitely saracenia flava variety rubicorpora, probably with heucheria, maybe backcrossed with red-tubed flava. That's my guess, but we may not know exactly, but it's a nice plant, maybe a cultivar. We grow a few fly traps here too, so this is the B52, which is happy and healthy. It does very well in this climate. And, scrolling down or panning down, more tuberous Drosera. So here we have Drosera pauciflora. This pot can have 50 or more rosettes, and a lot of those plants flower. So from August right through to October, you can see flowers open, often many each week in that period. It just looks absolutely amazing. And one of his Steve's all green picture plants is the Saracenia purpurea subspecies venosa. It's not Berkei because the nectar roll is not short, is too narrow, and it has a much taller scape. But still, it's a really nice looking plant, not commonly grown in this country, and it just glows. It's really, really attractive. And also a nice form of Saracenia excellens, so that's Minor-cross leucophylla. Now this, I think, this had the label from Steve's collection that it was linked to Adrian Slack, so I'm hopeful this could actually be the mythical Loch Ness. If not, it's certainly one that's very close. It's a very nice looking plant, so the pictures are about 30 centimetres tall, but it certainly has a really nice combination of the areolae from the coming through strongly from Saracenia minor, plus of course the white from leucophylla as well. Okay, stop that for now.
Oh.
And last but not least, show you some of the terraria, I guess it's a plural, within the house. So we've got this one here has got an aquarium water heater in it, set up to the maximum of about 32 degrees, and it has some Northern Territory Drosera in it. It's also got Utricularia aurea, although as we've found it doesn't have to be heated to survive here in winter in Newcastle, but it's much, much happier when it's kept warm, particularly in July and August. But yeah, the tropical Drosera are doing relatively well, which is good. And moving along to the middle terrarium, a lot of Mexican pinguicula. Some of the species there are quite neat, Mesophytica, plus also
Drosera hilaris.
Here's Drosera hilaris, there's Drosera slackii, there's Drosera admirabilis. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of difficulty getting admirabilis to flower, so this is the best admirabilis I've actually ever grown in a terrarium inside the house, even though in theory it could grow very well outside, but in practice it hasn't proven to be the case yet.
Cephalotus on the brick.
And in the far corner of the terrarium, which Fuzzy is trying to show you, there's a brick that's sitting on the base of the terrarium, and it's soaking up water, growing moss, and in that moss we've planted some biguicular plants that are getting established, and I thought, well, let's just try a cephalotus leaf, and to my surprise it has produced a little plant. Woohoo! So that is excellent. It's always nice to be able to increase the number of cephalotus because they are a very neat plant. I like them a lot. And moving along to this terrarium, we have some of the South American Utricularia. So in the front there, Drosera adele, which does very, very, very well.
Proliferal in there too.
Yeah, and there's Utricularia allure, which hasn't been in there for very long, but it's actually getting quite vigorous. It's actually growing estolent into the base of the terrarium, which I didn't discover until after I snapped it when I moved the pot. Oops. But hopefully it will recover. Also Utricularia alpina in that in the back of that terrarium. One I grow from seed, it's about 4 years old, and that's how much it's ever got. So hopefully it will someday flower. And underneath the terrarium setup, we have some grow lights set up, some LEDs. Basically, there's pinguicula that are being propagated. A nice newly purchased sapalotus, which is good.
And the old one, which was green.
Yes, some older plants, and also some Genlissia, which have been trialled in these pots, but they need a little bit of attention. You know, the idea was to actually be able to see the traps, which they need, as I said, they need a little bit of work, but that's coming up. It's a work in progress. And then over here we have a section of terraria that's dedicated to Nepenthes particularly. Getting some Nepenthes cuttings in there. Hopefully they'll take some of that ventricosa clipiata across, which is really nice.
Luck with cross-cutting, with Penthes cutting, so we're trying to make heat.
So yeah, and this has got a water heater in a cylinder, which is now in view. The idea is just to raise the level of humidity, and then underneath that there are some Drosera. So a lot of South African sundews in there, also Drosera rhinata, which are grown from seed. Pinguicula gigantea. Yeah, it's just nice to be able to grow some plants indoors. Some of them that don't actually do, that struggle to grow outdoors, particularly in our winters, even though the winters aren't too cold. But yeah, it's just nice to be able to use what would otherwise be a fairly awkward part of the house as a place to get more plants. So yeah, just wanted to show you some of the things, some of the plants that are grown here in Newcastle and how we grow them. So hope you're going well.
Last but not least, last terrarium.
But yeah, I'm just reminded by my trusty assistant of one other terrarium, so I will show you that next.
The International Carnivorous Plant Society wants you to be successful with your plants. We welcome growers just getting started all the way through professional scientists. We started an annual World Carnivorous Plant Day to celebrate these spectacular plants. Take a look around our website and you'll find historic documents about carnivorous plants, growing guides, free educational resources, and more. Have questions? Ask. We don't bite, but our plants do.